I'm Luce, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I am filming my February wrap-up. Now, I am filming this slightly later than I normally would want to film my wrap-up. We are like a decent way into March when I'm filming this. I still wanted to talk about all the books I read in February because I read a lot of really good books in February. I want to give them their moment. I want to give them a moment to shine. I am going to as well, before I go through every book, I am going to give you some stats on my reading for the month because I feel like that's interesting. So I read 12 books in February, which is not my best, it's not my worst. It's, you know, for me, 12 is like a pretty standard, pretty normal amount of books to read. I do tend to read a decent amount every month. And I read 4,043 pages, which makes sense. I was a little bit kind of shook by that because in comparison, I only read 2 more books in January, but I read like 2,500 more pages. But looking at my stack of what I actually read in February, I did read quite a lot of shorter books, and I was like fairly busy in February as well. So like, I'm not mad about it. And then I also listened to 15 hours of audiobooks, which again, compared to January is like nothing, but I think most of my reading actually in January was either pure audiobook or kind of like tandem of like physical with audio. So again, not mad about it at all. So yeah, those are my quick little stats. So now that the stats are out of the way, let's just get into talking about the books. Okay, so the first couple books that I read in the month of February, I do have a vlog, which is my Keep It or Yeet It vlog, my first episode of that, where if you want to hear kind of more in-depth thoughts about these books while I was reading them, then you can watch that. But the first one I read in February is The Curse of Blood and Wolves by Melissa McTernan. I gave this one 3 stars. I did have a good time with this one. This is a werewolf, kind of Little Red Riding Hood inspired fantasy romance book. And like I said, I did have a good time with it. It was very quick, it was very fun. This one felt too insta-lust into insta-love for me. And I said in my vlog as well, this book was horny as hell. And like I said in that vlog, I love spicy books. They are some of my favourite books to read. This one though was like too horny too quickly. Like these two didn't know each other and they were already like just lusting after each other. So it was like, that was a little bit much for me. I want like some more build up to it. But yeah, I did have a good time with this one, and I am interested in picking up the sequel when that one comes out, which I think is like later this year. This is also a really gorgeous Fairy Loot copy, so I am glad that I did enjoy this and got to keep it on my shelves. Okay, and then the second one I read was The Half King by Melissa Landers. This is another book from my Keep It or Yeet It vlog and another Fairy Loot romantasy pick. But this one I really enjoyed. I gave this one a 4.5 stars. This one follows our main character, who I actually have completely forgotten the name of, Cerise, who is a kind of priestess in this world. She gets sent by the leader of her kind of priestesses to travel to the capital's kingdom in order to try and break the curse that is placed upon the king. And there's obviously going to be a romance between them. And while this wasn't like anything groundbreaking, it wasn't anything super unique. Like I've read fantasy romances that feel very similar to this. For some reason, I just really enjoyed this book. I thought that it was like super engaging. Again, really quick to get through. I liked the characters. I really enjoyed the world. And I am 100% going to be picking up the sequel whenever this one comes out. I haven't seen any news or like just anything about the sequel for this yet, which I'm a bit upset about because I really want to read the sequel. This one did end on quite a big cliffhanger, so I am kind of dying for the sequel to this one. But yeah, absolutely love this. And again, a gorgeous Fairy Loot copy. Okay, then I have a DNF, which this one's a more kind of soft DNF. Like I do plan on coming back to this book at some point. Not right now, but it was Psycho Shifters by Jasmine Mass. This is the first book in a kind of shifter romance series, and I got about 50% in, so like I did make a decent dent. I got to like almost, I think coming up to page 200, and it wasn't bad, but I just wasn't in the mood for it. This is very silly feeling, and I know from what people have said about Blood of Hercules by the same author that that one is very funny and, you know, doesn't take itself too seriously. But this one, I don't know. There was just something about it, the way it was written, I just wasn't in the mood for. I found it too silly, and like the world building was also really not there. Like I was confused about what was going on, and you know, the whole setup of this world, I just wasn't following it. It's reverse harem, and it's three boys and 1 girl. And I didn't like any of the guys at the point where I was at. Like, 2 of them were like just straight up mean, and the other one was kind of just, I think he was supposed to be like the nicer one. The one was supposed to warm up to you quicker, but I just found him really boring. But like I said, this is a soft DNF. I do want to go back to the series at some point because this is like a pretty well loved series. Like, when I've been, because I'm part of like the Reddit that's like for reverse harem books, because I like reverse harem poly fantasy romance. This is one of the ones that a lot of people really love, so I do want to give it another chance, just probably when I'm more in the mood for like a silly type of fantasy romance. Okay, then the next one I have is my last book that I had for my Keep It or Yeet It vlog, and this is Seven Faceless Saints by MK Lob. This is a YA fantasy, and this one I had like no expectations going into because I didn't know anyone that had read this book, like not a single person. So I really wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. But I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. This is a, like I said, it's a YA fantasy. It's set in a Italian-inspired fantasy world, and we are following 2 characters who are estranged ex-childhood best friends, and they end up having to work together to solve a string of murders that are happening in the city. And I had so much fun with this book. Like, I think that this is like criminally underrated. I think not enough people are reading this. And the sequel is out for this one, and I do have it downloaded on my Kindle, so I'm planning on getting to it probably very soon. But I had so much fun. Like, I don't know if maybe it was because I haven't read a lot of YA fantasy recently, so maybe it just kind of felt like a bit of a breath of fresh air. But I was so into it. I was so into it. I really liked the characters. I thought the world was cool, and I love like a murder mystery plot in a fantasy. I find it really fun. So I enjoyed that, and I said in the vlog that like I did see kind of who the bad guy was going to be. I did see that coming, but that didn't impact my enjoyment on the book as a whole, because I think the way that the reveal was done and the whole end section I thought was really, really well done and well plotted. So it didn't matter that I kind of guessed it. So yeah, Seven Faceless Saints, if you are looking for a fun YA fantasy, I would 100% recommend this one. And then on a complete kind of 180 from like the fantasy and stuff I've been talking about, I read Pucking Ever After Volume 2 by Emily Rath, and I loved this so much. This is the second kind of novella collection from the Jacksonville Rays series by Emily Rath, which is one of my favourite romance series. It's an ice hockey romance series. It is very queer, it's very funny. I've loved the 2 kind of like full-length novels that I've read in the series, and I loved the first volume of the novellas, but this one, I gave this 5 stars. And listen, the main reason I gave this 5 stars was for the particular story at the end, which is the dentist story. If you have read this, then you know. But I was reading this at 3 a.m. in my bed on my Kindle, and I was screaming into it. I was like giggling, kicking my feet, screaming reading this. I loved it so much. It's fantastic. So yeah, 5 stars, loved this so much. I did actually start reading in February Pucking Sweet, which is the 3rd book in this series. That's why I read this one, to read Pucking Sweet. And I was enjoying it, but I've kind of just put it on hold for now because I am struggling with contemporary romance. I've said this a couple times in videos. I'm struggling with contemporary romance right now. So this was easy to read because it's novella. The entire bind up of it is only 232 pages, so it was like super quick. But I am going to be coming back to Pucking Sweet because I was loving it, but it just wasn't the right time for me to read it. Okay, and then I know I just said that I was struggling with contemporary romance, but like, I'm talking soft, sweet contemporary romance, like wholesome, lovely. Dark romance, I am still very much fucking with. And so I read Cruel King by Rena Kent. This is the first of 3 Rena Kent books that I read in February, so you will be hearing more about it. I genuinely don't think that I have made a video on my channel where I haven't mentioned Rena Kent at least once. I actually don't think I have. I might have to check that. But Rena Kent, I mean, if you've watched any of my videos, you know she's one of my favourite authors. I absolutely love her. And this one is book 0 in Royal Elite. So I have read book 1 before, and I actually reread it in this month, spoiler for later in the video. But I hadn't read this one. So I decided to start with this when I did my Royal Elite read. This one is following Levi and Astrid, and I gave this one 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed this. I will say because I've read the Legacy of Gods series by Rena Kent, which is that's kind of like the second gen for all her characters for the Renaverse. So I have seen all of the characters in her books as parents, and I love Levi in Legacy of Gods. So I was really excited to see his and Astrid's story and to see them as teenagers. And I did enjoy this one. It's not my favourite Rena Kent book that I've read, which makes sense because it's one of her earlier books. But yeah, 4 stars, I still had a really good time with it. Then I read maybe my favourite book of the month, and that is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This is a short little horror novella. This one, along with Cruel King actually, were on my top books to read in 2025. I loved this so much. This is such a short book. Like I think it just goes over 200 pages, but it's a book that I don't want to be any longer. I think this book was perfect. It was so beautiful. Like the way it was written was gorgeous, but it was also, I think because of the beautiful writing style, it made it more unsettling when weird stuff started to happen. And like at the beginning of this book, it felt like a romance. Like I felt like I was reading a contemporary romance, and then just something would happen that would make me kind of, side-eye it a little bit. Like I forgot I was reading a horror book, and then she would just very subtly kind of slide in and remind you. But this book I don't really want to say too much about because it is very short, and I think that the best way to go into this is actually not knowing too much about it. But this follows 2 characters, Rosemary and Ash, who Rosemary has just moved to this new city after a bad breakup with her ex, and she is kind of finding who she is out of this relationship, and she ends up going to this farmer's market one day and meeting this girl called Ash who has a stall there, and it goes from there. And yeah, I adored this book. I want to read everything Delilah S. Dawson has written now, because I did love the plot and I liked the way she built the characters, but her writing was just phenomenal. And like I said, the beautiful writing really kind of added to this unsettling, creepy atmosphere that she was creating. And I cannot recommend this book enough. Then I read The Crimson Moth by Kristen Cicerelli. This is another Fairy Loot copy, which again, is beautiful. And I gave this one 4 stars. This is I would say it's more like new adult. It's YA new adult, kind of on the cusp. Fantasy romance following a witch and a witch hunter. Now, that is a trope that I do really love, because I love a kind of forbidden love, enemies to lovers with actual stakes. The premise of this was really fun. I also had heard just phenomenal reviews for this book. I don't think that anyone I follow that's read this book hasn't enjoyed it. So I do think my expectations kind of, not ruined, but kind of dampened my enjoyment a little bit. I did still give this 4 stars, but I think if I hadn't been so overhyped for it, this could have been like a 4.5 to 5. Like I said, this is a witch and a witch hunter, and I'm so bad at remembering names. Rune. So our main character, Rune, who is this beautiful girl on the cover, she is a witch, and she is kind of notorious for being this elusive figure called the Crimson Moth who helps save witches from execution. Follow her and the male main character called Gideon, who is a witch hunter, and he is, I don't know if he's like a captain or he's some kind of high up in the witch hunters basically, and he is trying to hunt down the Crimson Moth. And so they end up becoming entangled, there is a romance, and like I said, I had a good time with this one, but I do think that if this wasn't so overhyped for me, it would have been higher rated. But I'm pretty sure the sequel is actually out for this one now. I know that the Fairy Loot copy is not coming out until like next year for some reason. Okay, if this angle is slightly different, my SD card was full, so I had to sort that out and resume filming. But yes, I will not have a matching copy in the Fairy Loot editions for quite a while. I'm pretty sure the audiobook is available on BookBeat, so I think I'm just going to pick up the audiobook and then get the Fairy Loot copy when it comes out. Okay, and then we are back to Rena Kent. Earlier in the video I said I read Cruel King, and I mentioned in, I think it was my March TBR video, that I have got my lovely bestie Kaitlyn into Rena Kent. I am going to put a link to her channel in the description box because she also makes bookish content, she makes cozy content, and I absolutely love her videos, so go check her out if you are interested. But we have been buddy reading the other Royal Elite books. So we read Deviant King and also Steel Princess, which are books 1 and 2. These are the first 2 books in a kind of trilogy within Royal Elite following Aiden and Elsa. and these are they're dark high school bully romances. And I gave Do You Think King a 5-star and Steel Princess 4.5. Just had so much fun with these. This one, Do You Think King, was a reread. I actually didn't like this book when I read it the first time because I was not in a dark romance mood whatsoever. This time I was in a dark romance mood, and I'm also obsessed with Rena Kent. So yeah, 5-star and 4.5. These are, as I said, following Aiden and Elsa, and they, for reasons kind of unknown to everyone at the start of the book, Aiden decides to target Elsa when she has moved to this new school and make her essentially a social outcast. So she is bullied and harassed by everyone at school because of Aiden, and they end up in a romance. There is a lot of mystery in this trilogy about, you know, Elsa's past, Aiden's past, why Aiden did what he did, and I really like it. I think there is something about Rena Kent's books that are so compelling. It's just, yeah, there's just something about them that just, number one, makes you want to read them, but also makes you love the characters. Like, Aiden King, if I met this man in real life, I would call the police. I would not be, I'd have nothing to do with him. But in the book, in this book, oh, I love him. I love him so much. And I also really like Elsa, our main character. She does annoy me a little bit in the second and third books, but also, like, understandable queen. Like, I would probably be acting the exact same way if I was actually in her position. But yeah, I absolutely loved these. I did, spoiler for March's wrap up, we did buddy read book 3 as well, and we are starting book 4 this week. So yeah, we are kind of on a bit of a Royal Elite binge at the moment. And then the last 2 books that I read are both rereads and both just 5 stars, perfect everything to me. I reread The King's Men and the Sunshine Court by Nora Sakavic in preparation for book 5, The Golden Raven, which came out at the end of February, which, again, spoiler for March's wrap-up, I did read in March. These are books 3 and 4 in the All for the Game series, my favourite book series of all time, and they were both 5 stars. I sobbed reading both of these. I was an emotional mess. But this is the last book in the original trilogy, kind of Neil's trilogy, the Foxes trilogy, and then this is the first book in the Jeremy and Jean trilogy, and I think this trilogy, don't get me wrong, I adore the Foxes and I love this trilogy so much, but I think that the Sunshine Court books are my new favourites because these came out, I think, like 10 years after the original trilogy, so Nora's writing and her storytelling has evolved so much from there that I think these are they're just kind of objectively better, but like, I love these so much. And I said this in my January wrap-up, but friends of mine, if you are watching this and you have not read this series, I say if you have not read this series, none of my friends have read this series, this year, I am going to make sure that all my friends have read this series because it means the world to me. Like, I think about these characters daily. Like, they are always in my head. I never stop thinking about them. I love these books so much. But yes, these are the 12 books that I read in February minus Psycho Shifters because I don't have a physical copy of that one. I would say overall it was a very good reading month. In terms of like my ratings, I had 1, 2, 3, 4. I had 5 5-star reads in February. And admittedly, there was like 3 rereads. One of them wasn't a 5-star on my original read though, but I think that's really good. I mean, the lowest rated book I had this month was a 3-star. So my goal for this year is, like, don't get me wrong, I want to read a lot of books, but like, I want to be reading books that I am loving, books that I love, basically. That's my goal for this year. And I would say so far, I am achieving that. Like, my average rating on Goodreads, let me actually double check. Yeah, my average rating on Goodreads right now is a 4.4, which it hasn't been that high since I was, 18, maybe 19. I feel like I'm having such a good reading year this year. I'm having so much fun with my reads, and March so far is shaping up to be a very good reading month as well in terms of quality and also quantity. So I'm very excited to talk about the books that I read in March Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to give it a like and subscribe if you feel like it. And hopefully I will see you in a new video again soon. Bye!